Okay, we're now recording. Means I can't cuss anymore.
Trait theories?
Yeah, trait theories. We're not going to do those. Won't be on the test.
372.
372. Thank you. So the section that begins at 372, we're not going to do. We're going to jump ahead to personality assessments. So all of those things about traits in between humanistic and personality assessment is off the table. If that isn't the best news you could get on a Wednesday, I don't know what is. Maybe if you got a stimulus check today, that might overshadow that little piece of news, but hey, has anybody gotten theirs yet? I know 2 people that have gotten it. That's all. I haven't gotten it yet. So at my age, I'm always cynical about this stuff. If it shows up, all right, then I got it, but I don't count on it. It's just so many things that seem to go wrong, and I just, okay, if it shows up, great. Okay, so there you go. Aubrey gave me the pages. So we're going from 372. Your mother took yours? That's just wrong. You're not supposed to have to pay them back for raising you. Maybe if you volunteer it, it's their job. That's always had a cynical look, and I didn't do this as a parent, but as a parent, you really only owe your children food, shelter, clothing, security, all the basics. And you really owe them, the best atmosphere you can. But once they reach 18, at that point, that's an adult, and you don't owe them anything beyond that. So you better be nice to your parents at that point in time if you want to continue to milk them. So we're redoing the house. Yeah. Did she have the freeze flood damage and stuff? We had to. We're playing with that ourselves. That's where all my stuff is going. Oh, you got it this morning. Wow, cool. So yeah. Talk about self-esteem, which we will in just a little bit. But before we do, we got to talk about one more of the guys that was a major figure in psychology. His name was Abraham Maslow. Oh, my mouth is dry this morning. Do a little water here with my giant water thing. Abraham Maslow coined something that he called a hierarchy of needs. That's right. And for Maslow, there were certain levels that human beings find themselves on. And this is going to have a lot to do with not just your personality, but how it manifests itself, how you act, how you behave. Okay. And there's 5 levels that you can be on. And we're going to start with the very bottom one. The most basic level of human existence is that of physiological needs. And some of those physiological needs I just mentioned. You need food, you need water, you need air, you need shelter, you need clothing. Unless you live at a nudist camp, I guess. But how many people do? And it's kind of hard to go to VTI if you're even on Zoom. You really got to be careful with that camera. So these are the basic physiological needs that you have. You have to satisfy those just in order to survive, right? So, and there are plenty of people in the world that are kind of basically on this level, that each day is a struggle to find food and water and things like that. And I'm hoping that all of us are lucky enough not to have to worry about that. The next level up, once you satisfy all of this, the next thing a person seeks is safety. Can I feel safe in my environment? If you're living under a bridge, how safe do you feel? I've actually had a client that until recently literally was living on the street. He had a van, so he had a place to sleep if he wanted to. But he literally would go to some of these tent cities around town that are in the woods, in some of the most surprising places you drive by every day, or sometimes it's temporary because they keep getting moved out. but they are forced to live in tents in the woods just where nobody can see them. And, that's not a very safe way to live. So that would be the second thing. But if you're in that particular situation, that's obviously going to affect how you behave in the world, right? A lot of those, there are a lot of people you see out on the corners signing, coming up with all sorts of things on there. Just had 3 babies and lost my job, I'm homeless, I'm hungry, I remember seeing one said, I'm not going to lie, I need a beer. So, they'll say all sorts of things out there. A lot of them truly are those people who are homeless. Now, it's amazing. A lot of them have kind of reached that physiological need thing. They're okay. They do, because they get enough money with the standing on street corners. They do have food and water and those basic things there. But it's not a good way to live. Don't we all like to feel safe? Isn't that kind of a basic of who we are? We like our safety. All right, let's say that you get past this. You're now safe. You've got a place to live. You can lock your door, feel reasonably safe. I mean, nothing is totally 100% safe, of course, but you feel safe. You can sleep at night. Maslow says the next thing that we need in this hierarchy of needs is love. Love and belongingness. If I couldn't spell that, save my life. Who doesn't want love? You all have, if you have a dog, and sometimes even if you have a cat, don't you feel loved? Isn't that what they supply? When they look up at you with those big brown or whatever color eyes they've got, especially with cats, and they adore you, and you feel wanted, you feel like you belong. And then sometimes you actually can get that from human beings, right? On a good day, that yeah, exactly. But a lot of times you can get the sense of belongingness just from a group that you're in. Sometimes it might just be coworkers. You might work at a place where you like your coworkers and you feel like you belong there. You're good at your job and they respect that. That's a part of that too. That the whole thing about love, and in English we're pretty limited when we talk about love. The ancient Greeks used to have, I think it was seven different terms for love, and each one was a different kind of love. Remember, philia was the like brotherly love, which is what Philadelphia is named after. Of all the towns that doesn't have any kind of love in it, boy, that's the one. That's a town, and I'm not kidding. This is no exaggeration. One Christmas at a Philadelphia Eagles football game, they did a stunt where somebody dressed as Santa Claus parachuted down onto the field at halftime. He landed awkwardly. He broke his leg. The crowd booed him. That's a tough crowd. That's not exactly brotherly love in my mind, but that's the kind of thing when we look at love, we're not just talking about, the kind of romantic love that we have. This can be a love between friends. It can be a love with family. It can be a love with your pets. So, and another good reason to always have a good pet. If they just had longer lifespans. All right, so now you
yourself a snake. They live for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah, longer than you once they eat you.
Not all of them can get big enough to eat you.
I know. Actually, the veterinarian I had when I was in graduate school, and I was going to school with his wife, he collected snakes, and I went over and I saw. I mean, there were some beautiful snakes in there, but he had to keep his house very warm because they're reptiles. So I think after we all graduated, they got a 2-story house so they could keep the snakes on the bottom floor, and they lived on the upper floor. So, but yeah, I guess they would give you a sense of belongingness as they wrapped around you and give you that feeling of being hugged very tightly.
There was a guy I knew that got a prescription from his doctor for reptiles, and
Really?
his insurance actually paid for him to get new ones because it was his like calming animal.
His emotional support?
Yes, this emotional support, snakes and lizards.
Snakes and lizards, well, I guess in a way, I mean, some of mine are birds. I don't get to keep them. I don't have any in the house. I don't have any parakeets or parrots, but yeah, I spend a lot of time on the computer looking at their pictures, so editing and all that. But hey, whatever works, right? Okay, so you've reached this level. You have love, you belong. What's next? For Maslow, it's esteem. And this really refers to having accomplishments in your life. You know, when you graduate, I hope you feel good. Okay, that's gonna be some esteem, right? You've got something. Once you get that degree, you got something nobody can ever take away from you. No college ever comes around and asks for their diploma back. I know a few people that should have that happen to them, but you know, but it doesn't happen. You will have accomplished something. Okay, we have a question if anybody knows what page the hierarchy of needs is in, and somebody else will find it way before I can, because I know where the book is, but I have to go get it. It's so old, it's falling apart. 317, there you go. So yeah, the hierarchy is there. So this esteem comes about, now it can come about from a number of different ways. It depends on more or less what your priorities are. If you have a priority in your life of raising a family, that might be the thing that gives you esteem. You have children, they grow up, they grow up to be good people. You know, they go off in different directions, but they're good people. One of them is good at working with their hands. One of them is good at working with children, and one of them is a good academic. And so they all do what they want to do, and they're happy in their lives. And that works for you. Okay. That's the important thing that Maslow says we're looking for at this time. Esteem doesn't have to come from only if you become the president of a company or something like that, but it does. It will come from whatever it is gives you that kind of esteem. Okay, gotcha, Amber. And last but not least, and this is a term that you'll hear bandied about. I mean, this is another one of those terms that leaked out of psychology and into the everyday lexicon, as they call it. There's a good college word for you. You should walk out of here with some college words. You got to be able to impress your friends some, right? And this one is called self-actualization. Now, Maslow's way of looking at this is that very rarely did people actually achieve this. This is kind of becoming all that you could be. You've maximized all the potential that you have, and you've accomplished great things. And the research that's been done on this doesn't exactly support his viewpoint of it. And what's kind of interesting too is that he used several examples out of history, such as Winston Churchill, who granted accomplished some great things in his lifetime, and yet the man suffered from major depression, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, well, actually in the next chapter. And so there's the people that he used, if he looked deeper at them, they were in many ways greatly flawed. There were things that were definitely not exactly self-actualized. And really what the research shows is that in the end, most of us can have these moments of it, but it doesn't really last. It's almost like the thrill of winning the lottery is a good example. If you win the lottery, and this is what research shows, you're going to have a period of time where you're ecstatic. This is like, wow, I don't ever have to worry about money ever again. This is incredible. But research shows that 6 months later, lottery winners are no happier than you and me, because a whole new set of problems creeps up and you get used to that particular thing. So it's not necessarily that self-actualization is a permanent state, but it can happen temporarily. And maybe it's only for a day or two, but it can happen to anybody. And it can happen simply because something wonderful may have happened. It may be the day you get married, or the day you have a child, or days, and even the day that you graduate. The date you walk across the stage may be, wow, I really did this. You know, it'll be a feeling of accomplishment, and it'll be just kind of the ultimate feeling of accomplishment you can have. So anybody can get there. And this was not what Maslow said at first. But for Maslow, and I think probably for anybody looking at this model, self-actualization is kind of the highest level that you can reach. So now think about the different ways on all 5 levels that you've got here, how you would act in each one of these levels. If you're looking for safety, you're not going to be feeling the same as if you found safety and now you're seeking love and belongingness, right? You're going to treat people differently if all you're looking for is just to not feel scared all the time, versus if you're looking for love all in all the wrong places, for those of you who are country music fans or watched Urban Cowboy. Very old. Told you I'm old school with my music. Okay, so any questions on Maslow? There he is. All right, then we're going to talk about something I mentioned just a minute ago. We would be talking about self-esteem. Do you have as much self-esteem as Seamus? As soon as I said his name, I looked at him. He was looking at me like, what? You're talking about me again. Self-esteem refers to what's your overall evaluation of your worth? On page 369. Thank you, Rachel. What is your self-image? And the thing about self-esteem is sometimes you got to break it down by situation. It might be that in certain situations, your self-esteem is high. Let's say that you're a really good student. And so when you're in your classroom, when you're going to school, you feel really good about yourself. But let's say the opposite is also true, that you don't like school, you don't perform well in it. It's just a means to an end. You want to hurry up and get through so that you can go out there and work. And maybe your self-esteem around work is much higher than it is in school. You know? And that happens. That really does happen. I'll never forget one student we had several years ago. No, we just moved on to self-esteem as a concept, as part of the what we're looking at. Still, we're in the humanistic mode, and so we're looking at it from that particular viewpoint. All right, now a few little facts about self-esteem is that males are generally higher than females. And I think that's a cultural thing. Males have been traditionally given more opportunities to do a bigger variety of things. You know, really, ladies, you're living in one of the best times in history for opportunity that you could have lived in, anytime, anywhere. Even when I was growing up, almost all my teachers in school were females, because basically females had 3 career choices if they wanted to work. And that was to be a teacher, to be a nurse, or to work as in like an administrative assistant, secretaries, receptionists, things like that. So depending on whether you went to college or not, those were basically the opportunities open to you. And so a whole lot of my education until I got to college, with a few exceptions, there were a few males, always the coaches for sure. But there was mostly females. I don't think I had a male teacher until maybe junior high. We called it junior high back then. That's also how old I am. So, you know, it is higher for females now. Things have certainly gone much better for the opportunity and for not wasting talent. There's a whole lot of females that were capable of doing a lot more. And not to mention that there's plenty of exceptions to that. Again, I refer you to the movie Hidden Figures. If you haven't seen that, great movie. I think you'd really enjoy it. And there were women who still had to fight the discrimination of being a female in a male-dominated world. And that still exists today, as I'm sure I'm not telling you ladies anything you don't know, but still in all, even over my lifetime, I have seen things change drastically for what women are able to do now. Okay, there's still breakthroughs to make. I understand that, but there is progress. As long as we have that, that's encouraging. Okay. But overall, males still have a higher self-esteem than women do. We're just a bunch of snobby guys. What can I tell you? Now self-esteem tends to be stable in the short run, but it can vary over the long run. And the exception can be if something sudden and drastic happens to you. Bless you and bless you. Yeah. Yeah, I do that a lot when I'm standing in class and I get different people. I can only see a few of you, so I only bless a few of you in Zoom, but I do a lot more blessing. It's almost like I'm trying out to be a preacher or something when I'm in class, especially in the spring. Now, the self-esteem tends to be lowest in adolescence and old age. You know, adolescence, you run into some, oh my gosh, you run into some really strange and intense problems because everything is so intense. You know, your brain explodes, your body changes, and there's a few people who are lucky enough to where all of it kind of seems to keep up together. You know, the physical and the mental and abilities and the self-esteem is high. And for the vast majority of us, it just, no, we're not quite there yet. We're not. How many of you were the most popular in your high school? Chances are, if we have a couple, that's about what the ratio would expect it to be. So in a class this big, it might be a few more than that. But no, I wasn't. I mean, I got along fine in terms I didn't get beat up too often. So actually in high school, I didn't get beat up at all. Unfortunately, got tall enough, I didn't get picked on much by then. So, but the interesting thing is, you know, with adolescence though, there's so much uncertainty. There's all sorts of doubts that you can come into your mind that can challenge you. It's just we compare ourselves to others, and generally speaking, when we compare ourselves to others, we much more likely like to be like. We don't compare ourselves to people who we think we're superior to, again, with some exceptions. But when you do that, it's going to make you have doubts. And so that those doubts lead to lower self-esteem. Okay, but what about old age? What is it about old age that would make you have lower self-esteem? As I get closer and closer to it, fortunately, I haven't succumbed to that yet, but I look around at some of my friends. One of my best friend from high school today, he retires. And he's kind of freaking out about it because he's worried about feeling useless. He's worried about where does his life go from here, even though he's got some good plans. He's going to stay busy, but he'll actually be working for himself for the first time. He's always worked for somebody else. And I think a great deal of his self-esteem came from the fact that he's very good at what he does. He works with his hands. I've worked with him in construction when we were young, and he really is good. He's talented. He's skilled. He's got all sorts of licenses. He does inspections, and he's just got all this self-doubt about doing it himself. And so he's my friend. I'm not his counselor, but I'm certainly working on him about that. Come on, buck up, buddy. We got to keep you up because you're going to be fine. But he's like, he runs in these doubts because he thinks he's not going to feel as useful as he has during all of his working adult life. So it's kind of interesting to watch a phenomenon like that. Okay, it can also vary a lot depending on what you're doing. If you do something well and you like what you're doing, then chances are your self-esteem is going to be just fine. If you're working in a dead-end job and you don't like the people you're working with and you don't like what you're doing, this will definitely affect your self-esteem. Another way to look at it is those of you who have been through a divorce will know that going through that process will beat your self-esteem up. No matter how at fault the other party might be, you're still going to beat yourself up for making that choice of that person. And so those kinds of things will definitely affect your self-esteem, and it may take a little while to get over. And again, in the last chapter, we'll talk more about relationships, and I'll see if I can help you from making the same mistake again. Ladies, you got to leave those bad boys alone. I'm telling you, it's just they're not good for your future. They're attractive. They turn you on, but that doesn't mean that
I
you.
married my bad boy.
Yeah, I know all the bad boys. Every guy out there is just a rough diamond, a piece of carbon you've got to polish up, right?
We've been married for almost 10 years and been together for almost 13.
Well, there's exceptions. I had a client that she's mid-60s now, and she married one of the worst boys at her high school, and she did straighten him out. You know, he became a plumber and has had a really good plumbing career. They've done very well, raised a couple of nice children. So I'm not saying it doesn't work out, but if you look at the divorce rate, it's not the best predictor of success and self-esteem and those kinds of things. So, you know, and I'm happy it worked out for you. That's a good thing. I'm certainly not knocking that. Hey, it's, you know, from my mind, you know, I run into couples in all sorts of situations where, you know, she was 20 years older than him. He's older, you know, big age gaps, interracial marriages, which can have all their own pressures. And it's like, I've come to the conclusion that, you know what, it might not matter so much if you find out what works for you. You're the only people that have to be happy. Now, you're going to have outside pressures in a lot of cases because people are going to, if you don't fit their idea of normal, then there's something wrong with you. No, there's something wrong with them. They need to look in the mirror. But at this point, is if you find, you know, whatever it takes to find the person that works for you, go for it. You know, that's the bottom line. It's everybody else just needs to learn to mind their own business. I think social media has made it harder for that too, because everybody wants to be in everybody's business and tell you how to live. Because I know you because of what you wrote in the chat column. Yeah, you know, I'm only on Facebook, and the only reason I stayed there is I put up a picture of Seamus every day with a caption, and he's got quite a following now. So I kind of feel I stay on it, right? But I'm not on anything else. I'm not getting on anything else. Ugh. Okay. Now, interestingly, high self-esteem does not have a correlation with, and y'all remember correlation, right? A link that you find that, like, if you have high self-esteem, then you'll have this. We don't find it in much. It doesn't correlate with your ability to perform. Just because you feel good about yourself doesn't mean that you're good at what you're doing. Okay. It doesn't correlate with success. You could be a complete failure and have high self-esteem, although that it would be kind of unusual. It's not correlated with good health, which is kind of a shame. If we could just raise everybody's self-esteem, maybe that would help even more with the vaccinations, and maybe they'd work better. It does have some correlation with happiness. If you feel good about yourself, chances are you could be happier. Again, correlation, not cause and effect. Now, one of the things that I want to throw in here, it's not in the book, but I think it's an important consideration. And I blame my profession for this, but they did a study, I want to say it was back in the 70s, where what they set up was a situation in a classroom where they had the researchers go around and tell teachers that certain students, they'd done testing on all the students, and they found that there were certain underachievers that were about to have a burst of development, if you will. They were going to become much better students. And then they kicked back to see what would happen. And they actually got this effect. But in observing the classrooms at this point, they found that the teachers started paying more attention to these children. And so they found that these children actually did raise their achievement scores, if you will. And they came to the conclusion that self-esteem is a very important factor in the child's development. And so because of that, they put this paper out, and this has become a big thing, the self-esteem movement. And the result of this, I found out in the 90s when I coached this girls softball team in the 10 to 12-year-old range, and we came in last place. And I think we only won 3 games the whole season. And It was kind of painful to say the least. But we had this awards ceremony and they were giving out trophies for first, second, and third. And you know, when I played Little League, we did the same thing. We just got ribbons, but if you came in first, second, or third, you got something. And that stopped. If you didn't get at least third place, like in the Olympics, you didn't get anything. But in this girls softball thing, we got trophies for participation. And I'm sitting there looking at this thing going, oh, how fast can I get this in the garbage? This is just wrong. This is like the whole thing about this self-esteem movement got way out of hand. We started thinking that the little darlings have to feel loved for everything they do. And we create a situation like I described in that first experiment where you just tell people you succeeded even when you didn't. It's a form of learned helplessness. This is not a good thing. Self-esteem is a good thing, but the bottom line is it should come from accomplishment. You know, that, and to me, what that means is in school, we got to quit emphasizing just the academics. We need to emphasize all sorts of areas where children are good at and can succeed. And if that's musical talents, if that's artistic talents, if that's athletics, whatever it is, we need to encourage those kinds of things. More about working with their hands and all of that kind of stuff. That's very, very important. Okay. And Avery, the other thing was performance. Sorry it took so long. I didn't want to lose my momentum. I'd forget where I was. And then I'd lose all my self-esteem.
Mr. Fahey, George Carlin does a fantastic bit about all of that.
He's and he's one of my favorites.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would show that in class, except for he says the words that got the last teacher fired. So, but yeah, Carlin is wonderful. Yeah, Carlin's one of my heroes. He's just, what a brilliant wordsmith. Incredible. So anybody wants to, and there's a whole bunch of George Carlin videos on YouTube. So imagine if you do George Carlin and self-esteem, you'll be able to find out. In fact, I'll be watching that after class, or I'm uploading the recording and sending it off to Ms. Huff. Okay, and which kind of leads me to the next thing. There's a couple of good ways to improve self-esteem, and one of those is achievement. That when you finish this school, and you'll have put in some good work to do so, once you get to that point, you should have some self-esteem. You will have achieved something. That's a good thing. You know, I got to admit, just from my own experience, graduating from my first time with my bachelor's degree, I always kind of expected to do that. And it wasn't that it was a feeling of superiority. It was a lot of the way I was raised by parents. My dad didn't even finish high school. Mom did, but that was it. No, neither one of them had any college. But the way I was raised was they would just kind of casually mention, well, when you go to college. And so I just thought it was normal. It was like going to 13th grade for me. And I did, and I had to drop out and go in the Army. And so I was out for 3 years. So then I came back, finished up. But when I finished that, it was like, okay, well, good excuse. Let's go get a keg and have a party. But it wasn't that feeling of accomplishment. The next degree was. When I got my master's, it was a lot harder. It was more like the program you're going through. It was intense. They own you when you go through grad school. And that one, I've got a picture of me getting my diploma that I've got a grin as big as you want to see anywhere. That was a feeling of accomplishment. I really did achieve something that time. And it really was a real feeling that did give me a feeling of self-esteem. So depending on what it is you want in life or expect in life, when you achieve it, yeah, you're going to feel more self-esteem. Another way to get self-esteem is to have a good system of support. When you've got supportive people around you, they're definitely going to be happy for you. They're going to encourage you. Those are the kind of people you want to surround yourself with. Now, you don't get to choose your family, and some of them are always going to have some kind of opinion of you that isn't what you always want to hear. And if you're lucky, you only see them at Thanksgiving. If you're even luckier, it's a big Thanksgiving, and you could sit at the other end of the table and not really have to engage with them. You know, throw a drumstick at them when they start talking bad, right? That could be a fun Thanksgiving. But if you have a good support system, that can also improve your self-esteem. And some of the best, in fact, maybe the best piece of advice my mother ever gave me was be picky about your friends. And I always have been. I've been blessed in my life to have some wonderful friends. I really have. So, and I think that's really enhanced my life. It really has. So I advise you all, be picky about your friends. It will pay off. All right, so let's look at this evaluation, or the evaluation of humanistic stuff. It really expanded the field. Once this started blowing up, and it really did attract people pretty quickly, because finally psychology wasn't this just pessimistic or mechanistic approach to life. Wait, there's more to it than that. We're looking at the whole person. We're looking at growth. We're looking at how your conscious experience can be important to you. Okay, it really was just, it was just more optimistic, and that's appealing. And so there's been, and a number of these things we've talked about, I'll talk about again when we talk about doing therapies, because I do incorporate quite a bit of this into my therapy, where especially some Rogers stuff. And again, I'll talk about that when we get to that chapter. It's useful stuff, I can tell you that in my field. Now, part of the problem is how do you test this stuff? I mean, we could come up with questionnaires to measure self-esteem. You know, it's like, I could just ask you directly, how do you feel about yourself? And I do. I ask that question. You know, how are you feeling today? How do you really feel about yourself? Well, deep down, you know, just take it by layer and break it apart and get it down. Deep down, how do you really feel about yourself? If you're really honest with yourself, you know, and just kind of take it off, peeling it off layer by layer like an onion to get there to see what I'm working with. But it is difficult to test. Difficult to test something like the unconditional positive regard. How do you test whether you're feeling actually self-actualized? That's a very subjective thing. Yeah, the day I got my master's degree was a very self-actualized day. And that was on a Saturday when I got the degree. Monday, I'm back at work again, and it's back to okay. You know, I've got another plaque on my love me wall. You know, so. But hey, go ahead and get those things on your love me wall. Some people think it may be too optimistic, and maybe for some people it might be, but for others it might be just what they need. So, but these are some of the criticisms of it. But the biggest one probably is how hard it is to test. You can test it a little more than you can the psychodynamic stuff with, you know, Freud, especially the id, ego, superego. But it still can be very difficult to test. All right, so jump some pages, unless you have any questions over humanistic. Any questions on humanistic? Everybody feels optimistic, good self-esteem, all because you've accomplished the fact that you got to class today in the middle of the week. You survived husbandry if you were there. And you're in quarantine. You don't have to waste the gas to drive to class. If you're in quarantine, you're out of husbandry, aren't you? Yeah, so how many of you are going ha 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 about this time?
The whole Onyx is in quarantine until next Wednesday.
I think it's the
And
12th, yeah. The email I got.
Well, half of us are still 2 weeks.
Okay, well, hopefully you like your home, you feel safe, and you're surrounded by love and belongingness. That would be good. You know, really, the way I look at it, Sally, is we've kind of all been quarantined for the most part, especially somebody that's older like me, now for over a year. So. Okay, that's cool, Zoe. Yeah, I've done a lot of group therapy. I don't think I ever did anything quite that formal where I would have people do that. One of the things I find sometimes about doing the same thing with a person each and every time is they start anticipating it, and it kind of tends to lose some of the meaning a little bit. But if you really do adopt it as something that works for you every day, that's great. That's really great. So I think part of that's a reflection of me. I can get bored with the same exact thing every day. It's one of the reasons why I like what I do for a living. Every day's different. You know, even when I teach, every subject's different. I mean, or everything I'm going to talk about is going to be different from day to day. With my clients, I have some clients I've seen for years. I never know where they're going to be when I show up. So it's always different. I need that. That's my personal requirements in life. You can't stick me in a cubicle and expect me to perform very well for long. So, but everybody's got their own little thing. And that's another good thing about knowing who you are. Learn who you are so that you'll know what does work for you and what makes you happy. And sometimes that's a painful thing when you go, I just can't do that. You think it sounds like a good idea. I could do that. And it just doesn't work because it's not quite you. In the end, it helps to follow your heart. And I'm hoping that almost all of you are doing that because you love animals. And this is what's drawn you to being here, to being in this field. All right. Let's assess personality. Some of you have probably taken some personality tests in your time. We're going to talk about those. Okay. In fact, let me grab something 1 second. I know right where it is because we're going to talk about this right away. We're going to talk about certain personality tests. I do have one right in my hand now. We're going to talk about it. So I'm going to grab it real quick. Now, when we give personality tests, it depends on the approach to psychology. So if you're a Freudian, you're going to do a different kind of test than you're going to do if you're a behaviorist. If you're a behaviorist, I just want to measure observable behavior. You know, what are you doing and what can we do to change that behavior if that behavior is not working for you? If you're a kleptomaniac and you go around stealing things, that behavior is probably not going to work for you in the long run. What can we do behaviorally to do that? So if I'm a behaviorist, I don't care what your emotional state is around it. We just want to change the behavior. But if I'm a Freudian, I've got to know what the unconscious conflicts are so that we can try and unravel those and get you enough insight to where you can make the changes you need to make. So it has a lot to do with the approach that you've got, okay? So we're going to look at, first we're going to look at what we call projective tests. And projective tests are things that are designed to tap into what's hidden, mostly the unconscious, okay? And in this particular case, the first thing I'm going to talk about is something that's called the Rorschach. For all these years, I still can't spell it. It's also known as the ink blot test. Now, one of the interesting things about teaching this now, and I'm thoroughly trained in this. This is kind of the interesting thing for me. I'm thoroughly trained in it, but with the license that I chose to get, I'm not allowed to do it. I was allowed to do it when I was in grad school and did it a number of times. But ever since I got the license I have, which is licensed professional counselor, we're not supposed to use projective tests, which is fine. At this point in my career, I don't do any testing at all. That was one of those things that kind of bored me, and I said, hey, I got to do more. Plus, I find out I can get all the information I need with just a good clinical interview. But when we first started teaching this stuff, when I was taking it as a course and giving it as a grad student, and then teaching it in classes in the early days, we weren't allowed to show you the cards themselves. The idea being that we need virgin eyes looking at this, because I want, when you tell me what you're seeing, that has to be completely from a blank slate, because we're trying to tap into something that you haven't thought about before, that you haven't seen before. And I started looking for a video to show on this to see what I could do. And oh, by the way, all the textbooks would have something that looked like an ink blot, but it wasn't one of the actual ink blot cards, of which there's 10, that was actually in the set. And then I went, just 2-3 years ago, I went looking for, man, I wonder if there's any good videos out there. And sure enough, there's videos out there with every single one of the cards exactly as they are. I said, okay, you know, let's see, the shackles are off. I can pull out this card as if I was giving you the test, and I can show it to you. And the first thing I would say to you is, what might this be? And that would be all I'd say at that point. And you would start telling me what you're seeing. And me, I'm trying like crazy to write down every single word that you're saying. Okay. Now I'm going to go through these, as you can see in this particular card, I think it's first 5 are like this. They're black and gray and white. Okay. He's actually got a little water damage, so I don't even know if I could use these anymore if I was given them. But that's what they look like, and they're really just, it was an ink blot that Rorschach back in the 20s took and folded a piece of paper over. So he had symmetrical, identical two sides. You know, you got this one, you say, what might this be? And you just go through the cards. I don't have to show you all these. You get to the fifth one and you throw in a little color. You got some red, okay? So now you're still telling me, and all I've really said is, what might this be? Here's another one that you get a little red. And then boom, we're going to throw you the big ones. We've come into the 21st century. We go from black and white to color. It's full color of the last three. There's the last one. So anyway, that's it. If you want to see all the cards, they're on the internet. And I don't have to fake anything with it. I'll just tell you that. Now, once you've told me what you think you see in all of these wolf, a tick. Yeah, animal answers are very common too. You know, a bat is what you get a lot on that second one. Yeah, so, but anyway, because again, I'm thoroughly trained in this, but I could spend, you know, we could spend a whole term on just the Rorschach. But now that I've shown you all these and I've written down everything you've said, I go back to the first card and I'll flip it back over again. It says, now, this is what you told me that you saw. What made it look like that? And this will be as key as the actual answers like wolf and tick are, in that you can say, okay, well, it'd be the shape, it would be the colors, it might be the shading. You know, you've got all sorts of variety of things that you can talk about. And I'm writing these down furiously too. So when you go back and grade them, you look for trends. It's like, how many times did this person say that I like the contrast between black and white, or I mentioned white at all as part of it? You know, the eyeballs are in those white circles, you know, those things can trend towards certain things that you're looking for in these personality tests. And those things that you're looking for can be some things like, how do you make decisions? This one I always found kind of interesting, in that there's ways to tell through this test if you're the kind of person who tends to take in all the information you possibly can, mull it around in your mind, and then you make a decision. Or are you the kind of person who does trial and error? Okay, we'll try this first. If that works, great. If not, we'll go to this or this. And so you try to solve things by doing that. And now, according to the way I was trained on it, either one of those is fine. The people that have problems are the ones that go back and forth between these two things and don't have a consistent approach. You know, there's all sorts of little things in there that might even, there's one thing in particular that when I was trained was told, if we get an answer indicating that this is what made it look like that, you want to stop the test immediately and check them for suicide. See if they're having suicidal ideation. That there's a strong correlation between a certain type of answer and feeling suicidal. And it was based on a study that was done in North Carolina, where they had taken, there was like, I think around 600 people who had committed suicide, who had taken Rorschachs within something like 2 months of committing suicide. And there was a consistent pattern of this particular type of answer in there. So we were told, and luckily none of us, as we were doing our practice on other students and people, that we ever ran into this, because we were told, man, if you run into this, I want you to get them to the counseling center immediately on campus. So, you know, so there's some useful things in here, but it is designed to be a test that's a psychodynamic test. We're looking for the unconscious. So that is what that test, and all the projective tests do. That's kind of the most famous one. That's the one that it's still widely used today. People who test use this. Except for the part where you're having to write everything down, it's not a difficult test to administer. But that is the first one to talk about. The next one is called the thematic apperception test. Somebody help me out. There should be a picture in your book of one of the actual cards in that one. It's like yep, that's it. The younger lady and the older lady looking over her shoulder. And in this particular case, there's about 20 of these. And usually most clinicians, if they're given this test, maybe pick 5 or 10 of their favorites or whatever. And they'll hold them up and ask you, tell me a story about what you see in this picture. So, and you can get quite a variety of stuff, and you start looking for trends in this as well. Do you look for trends of like something? Yeah, but is it creepy as that two-headed bird? You did, Gina, you weren't here Monday, were you? You can get the two-headed bird I showed.
No, I missed that one.
I had a two-headed bird in my backyard this weekend. I got a picture of it. I sent it
That's
off
great.
to Cornell for them to look at, and I haven't heard back from them yet. But yeah, this particular thing, you look for unconscious things. You're looking for something to come out of a blank slate. All right, here's this ambiguous drawing. Tell me a story about what's there. Okay, page 379. Thank you. So that's pretty easy to give. You write down as much as you can when they're telling you the story, and you go from there. Okay, another one is incomplete sentences. Now the incomplete sentence test is kind of fun too. It's going to have the start of a sentence and then a blank after it. And it can be, I'm just going to make some stuff up. I remember a couple of the specifics, but it was like on Monday mornings, I blank. When I'm out on a first date, I blank. And you have to fill all these things in. They just get you started. There's one that I think that says, my mother, blank. You know what they're going for there. And then one of the ones right towards the end, maybe the next to last one, just says I, blank. And so you fill it in from there. So obviously you can go in all sorts of different directions. You are free to just let it out and say whatever it is that you want, and boom, there's your chance. And of course, you're probably going to be fairly guarded because there's this person on the other side that's trying to read my mind, you know, and he's going to analyze me. So I'm going to be real careful about what I write. One more. Graphology. Everybody's got different handwriting, don't they? Now, the idea behind graphology is that we can see into your personality with whatever your handwriting is like. Now, and this is like, you know, these days, I don't know how much cursive writing everybody's growing up doing. I mean, it was all we did in class. We hand wrote all of our essays. We hand wrote all of our notes. We had typing, but we didn't take typing until high school. And then it was an elective. It wasn't something that you had to take in those days. And I'm glad I did take it. And I wasn't there weren't a lot of males taking it. My dad thought it'd be a good idea. It's a good skill, son. And boy, did it turn out to be a great skill, because when I went in the Army, they sent me to MP school, as you saw, but I never had to work as an actual MP out on the road. When I got out to my permanent duty station, they found out I knew how to type. And first they put me to work in a personnel office. And when they did that, believe it or not, I was able to type up my own promotion orders twice. And I sent them through, everybody signed them, and I literally promoted myself twice because I could type. And then the second half of the Army, I got transferred to the provost marshal office, and I worked as a dispatcher. And I worked with the most wonderful person I worked with in the Army. I really loved the guy. He's the staff sergeant that he was the desk sergeant in Saigon when the Tet Offensive went off. But he was a great guy. I mean, he was so much fun. And I worked really well with him. One of the best people I ever worked with in my life. So knowing how to type really, really paid off for me. It was great. Wow. Or typing. Now, typing is just keyboarding. It's really the same thing. So everybody gets that now, I think. Right, Gina? They got keyboarding.
Neither one. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and neither one of them have been taught, because I learned cursive when I was like in 3rd or 4th grade.
Yeah, it was 3rd grade for us.
Yeah, and then I took typing in high school, and neither one of my kids have they've never been exposed to either one of those.
How sad. That's not
Yeah.
good. What school district are they in? Or
We're in Fort Bend.
Okay, I would.
And they're supposed to be one of the best school districts.
Right, that's why I'm shaking my head. Going,
Yeah.
What are they thinking?
After I left the 3rd grade at my school in Indiana, they stopped teaching cursive writing.
Wow.
They just started
Me
cursive
too.
again with my 3rd grader and my 5th grader,
That's
like a
good.
year or two ago.
That needs to come back. Like I told you, the first class, we find that you tend to remember things better that you write down in cursive than you do by typing things in, keyboarding them into your computer. So, you know, I'd hate to think it's a lost, not just a lost art, but that's a skill that is very, very handy. Well, there's a good pun. It's handy. It wasn't even intended. So
I was taught cursive, but then later on, it takes so much longer to write out in cursive, especially when you're taking notes. So I just switched to print because it's a lot easier.
well, that, you know, and that kind of counts. You're still doing it by hand. So it's still tapping into the part of your brain that requires that skill. And apparently that still helps it to tap into your memory and stay there than it does if you're just keyboarding for some reason, even though you're using your hands. I don't think we understand it physiologically or biologically, but that's what the research shows. So we just retain it better if we write it down than if we type it in.
They probably stopped teaching typing because they already do that anyway on their phones.
Well, I spent 2 years as a diagnostician in a junior high in the Conroe School District, and they were teaching keyboarding to all the kids because you need it for your computer skills. So and that was interesting, you know, and good that they actually started it earlier than high school. But the fact that they're doing away with cursive is just like, I don't like that. So because, and again, for the practical reason I just described. So, you know, the thing about
But it's back.
yeah, let's hope. I mean, it's a valuable skill. It's yeah. I still remember my 3rd grade class. We walked into it, and all the cursive letters were up above the blackboard. Again, I'm old school. One of our great, you know, all the little monitor jobs you can get in elementary school. One of our favorites was eraser monitor, because you got to leave the class with all the erasers, go out the playground and bang them together, make clouds of chalk smoke. The things that amused us when I was young. We didn't need video games, just give me 2 erasers. Yeah, I'm happy. So, but anyway, graphology is supposed to be able to read into your personality, just what it is that makes you tick, you know? So yeah, those were great erasers. Wow, I just noticed the time. I'm going to have to start. I'll tell you more about graphology tomorrow. So, because I got to let y'all go, unless you just want to stick around and talk about your handwriting and find out what I know about you by seeing your signature. Y'all take care. See you tomorrow.
Bye, Mr. Fahey.
Bye-bye. Hey, somebody remind me tomorrow to tell the folks who weren't there today about what we're leaving out so they don't have to do that. But y'all take care.